For decades, it felt like we all understood the rule book for the global economy. But right now, a powerful new strategy is quietly reshaping global trade, and it's creating a whole new set of winners and losers. So let's dig into how this great realignment is literally redrawing our world. Okay, so you've probably heard of MAD, right? Mutually Assured Destruction. That was the Cold War idea that kept the superpowers from pushing the big red button. Well, guess what? The world is mad all over again. But this time, it's not about bombs. It's about a fragile new balance, mutually asymmetric dependence, where the world's biggest economies desperately need each other, but in completely different and often clashing ways. So what exactly does this new mad world even look like? Well, think of it as this incredibly complex web of economic ties, with China sitting right in the middle. And this isn't some simple, they need us, we need them situation. Oh no. It's a tangled network of reliance that creates both huge opportunities and some really major vulnerabilities.
And this is where you can really see the imbalance, that asymmetry. The West is heavily reliant on China for things like the critical minerals we need for green technology, not to mention all our consumer electronics. But China? It depends on the West for the really high-end tech, think super advanced semiconductors, that it needs to fuel its own industrial growth. It's a two-way street, all right, but the lanes are carrying totally different cargo.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're getting our laptops, our cell phones, and things like the permanent magnets that are absolutely essential for wind turbines and EVs from China. In return, China needs the West's most advanced semiconductors, its complex aerospace technology, and even specialized stuff like the silver powder it has to import to make its own solar panels. Each side is holding cards the other really needs to play. Okay, but why are these economic giants making such different strategic moves? Well, to get that, we've got to pop the hood and look at what's actually powering their economies. Because the answer tells you everything about their priorities and their weak spots. So let's start with Europe. The EU's economy, at its core, runs on what its people earn and spend. I mean, look at this. Nearly half of its entire GDP, 47.9%, comes from employee compensation. It's a consumer-driven model through and through.
Now, flip that coin over and look at China. A huge 43% of its GDP comes from investment. We're talking about building factories, roads, apartments, the works. It's a completely different kind of economic engine, one built on construction and capital spending, not so much on what people are buying at the store.
And this brings up a massive question that economists are grappling with right now. That investment-first model, it created an economic miracle, no doubt about it, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But is that miracle starting to look more like a malady? Is it creating inefficiency and debt that could choke off future growth? Okay, so you have this new world of lopsided dependency on one hand and China's totally unique economic engine on the other. So what's the West's play here? Well, they have a strategy, and it all comes down to one key word: de-risk. This term was really pushed into the spotlight by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and the G7 quickly got on board. And here's the key thing, something they repeat over and over. De-risking is not the same as decoupling. The goal isn't to just unplug from China entirely. No, it's more like performing surgery, carefully managing the big risks while protecting your most vital economic and national security interests. So how do they actually do it? Well, it breaks down pretty neatly into a protect, promote, and partner plan. First, you protect your most sensitive technologies with high fences, using things like export controls. Second, you promote your own domestic industries with huge policies like the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. And finally, you partner up with friendly nations through groups like the G7 to build stronger, more reliable supply chains. It's a whole-of-government approach to this new world. And listen, this isn't just talk or some theory on a piece of paper. This strategy is already making real waves, actively redrawing the global manufacturing and trade map. The shift is already happening, and the data is pretty shocking. I mean, just look at the numbers here. They're staggering. From 2022 to 2023, in just 1 year, U.S. imports of goods from China fell by 20%. That's not a slow drift. That is a massive and incredibly rapid pivot in one of the biggest trade relationships on the planet.
So the obvious question is, right? If that trade isn't coming from China, where's it going? Well, we're seeing this huge reallocation play out in real time. In countries like Mexico and Vietnam, They are stepping up in a big way to become the new go-to manufacturing hubs.
And projections show this is just the beginning. By 2032, U.S.-China trade could drop by nearly $200 billion. At the same time, trade within North America is forecast to surge by almost $500 billion. And it's not just a regional story. Both the U.S. and the EU are building stronger ties with ASEAN, that's the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, plus countries in Africa and India. The writing's on the wall, a major pivot towards regional and more trusted partners.
You know, there's a great analogy that really brings this all home. The economic relationship between the U.S. and Europe isn't just about goods. It's services, it's investment, it's innovation. It's like a 12-lane autobahn with traffic flowing smoothly in every direction. Now compare that to the relationship with China. It's a busy road for sure, but it's more like a 2-lane highway. It's mostly just physical goods going back and forth, which makes it much more vulnerable to traffic jams or even roadblocks.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Where is all of this heading? The bottom line is, we are living through a massive, fundamental shift, and it's going to affect everything. Industries, economies, and our jobs for decades to come.
What we're seeing is really the end of an era. That old model of globalization, where the only thing that mattered was finding the cheapest place to make something, that's over. We're now in a new age of strategic realignment, where geopolitics, national security, and making sure your supply chains don't break, those things are now just as important as the price tag. That is the new logic of the global economy.
And that leaves us with the big, multi-trillion-dollar question. As these economic giants keep redrawing the world map, driven by this powerful force of de-risking, who comes out on top and who gets left behind? The truth is, that story is being written as we speak.